I call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Education, which was duly noticed on June 18th, 2021, through posting and notification of the press in accordance with Wisconsin 19.84. Pledge of Allegiance. To adopt tonight's agenda.
So move.
Oh, I got it in stereo. Okay, Commissioner Ardrey and Commissioner Donnershausen? Oh, Mr. Hamlin, okay. Okay. There we go. Okay. So all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, we are unanimous with Commissioner Herda absent tonight. Safety message, Commissioner Paul.
Thank you. Today's topic is the sun and skin protection, including sunscreen. I have a prop. And associated dangers. There are many benefits of the sun: vitamin D absorption, improved mood, sleep schedule regulation, but there also are some problems. The sun makes UV rays, which can cause damage to the skin and also skin cancer. The best way to avoid sun damage is to limit direct sun exposure. New information has surfaced in recent years about dangerous chemicals that have commonly been used in sunscreen products. My research has explained that older sunscreen products were used before more stringent skincare testing came into play, and now those questionable ingredients are being more closely examined and removed from products. Why the move? Testing has shown that some key sunscreen ingredients have been shown to absorb into the skin systemically, some even found to absorb into user breast milk, urine, and blood plasma, which is scary. So there are ways to protect your skin more safely. Avoid sun exposure in the hours from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. when the sun is the strongest. Wear protective clothing and gear. When swimming, consider a swim shirt or even board shorts. And when choosing sunscreen, look for sunscreens that are now called mineral sunscreens as opposed to chemical sunscreens. I have one here, and you will notice that it says mineral. They're now being labeled as such, which is helpful when you are choosing a new sunscreen. Mineral sunscreens work by blocking the rays and reflecting sun away from the skin versus chemical sunscreens that act like a sponge and absorb UV light. When choosing any sunscreen, avoid products containing oxybenzone, which is considered the most worrisome of the chemical sunscreen ingredients. Mineral sunscreens are considered much safer in terms of chemical exposure and absorption of potentially toxic chemicals. And I told you about what to look for in your products. Also, on the topic of sunscreen, if you are not aware, sunscreen products do have expiration dates, and typically they only are valid for about 1 year. So any product from the year prior or much longer than that you may have in your home, you should definitely discard. Another alarming aspect of chemical sunscreens is the danger that they pose to aquatic life like coral reefs. How does sunscreen chemical enter our environment? Well, the sunscreen you may apply may not stay on your skin. When we swim or shower, sunscreen may wash off and enter our waterways. How can sunscreen chemicals affect marine life? Well, it can impair growth and photosynthesis of algae. Coral, it can accumulate in the tissue of coral, induce bleaching, damage the DNA, deform young, and even kill the coral systems. In mussels, it can induce defects in their young. For sea urchins, it can cause damage to immune and their reproductive systems, also deforming their young. Fish can decrease fertility and reproduction and cause female characteristics in male fish. This is all from sunscreen. Crazy. And dolphins can also accumulate in their tissue and be transferred to their young. So how to find safe sunscreen products? Well, there's a great website that I have actually used for years called ewg.org, and it has everything you need for finding great sunscreen information. It includes typical products, what the ingredients are, and you can look up a product guide so you can kind of find out what are the best. They have different standards for babies and children and maybe products for your face and so on. So that's a great website to use. That's what I have. So stay safe in the sun.
Thank you. That's a lot of stuff I didn't have any idea about. And I am old enough to remember when we used to use baby oil. So, okay. Awful. Commissioner Hannaway, did you have something?
I think that was a great timing because if there was a positive of wearing a mask the last 2 months, I've been treated for skin cancer on my face, and when it erupted early May, the mask basically hid that, which fortunately it has cleared. I get to see the dermatologist, but it's a great timing thing in it. And again, I think it's one of those things that I look at from the standpoint of sins of my youth. Of I don't need that, and didn't put it on. And I was a baby oil generation too, and grew up down south. So great message for tonight. So it's not something I would want anybody to go through. So
Thank you very much. Yeah, very important. Okay, and so we don't have any citizens' comments tonight. Okay, so moving on to the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, so I have Commissioner Murray and Commissioner Paul. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, we are unanimous with Commissioner Herta absent tonight. Okay, moving on. Why is my machine locked up? I'm going to have to go to paper or up there. Okay. So tonight we are going to consider approval of a resolution authorizing the independent hearing officer, or IHO, for the school district. Mr. Garner.
I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution authorizing independent hearing officer for the School District of Janesville.
Okay, that was Commissioner Murray and then Commissioner Domerhausen on the second. Okay, any discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
I would just like to hear what are our other options.
Thank you,
Okay,
Commissioner Ardrey. The board can choose not to do an IHO as they have in the past. The board used to listen to all the different expulsion recommendations, and it would take hours upon hours for you to listen to the case and then present literally right here. It was the old format, and you would have to present. We would present our case. The parents and families would have a chance to present to the board, and then they would have to make that decision. Because of the number of expulsions that had increased over time, the board chose to hire an independent hearing officer, which is an option, and we do have to authorize that resolution on a yearly basis.
Thank you. I know, but my main reason is number one, two new board members hadn't necessarily heard that, although it is in the documentation. And years ago, there were hundreds of expulsion hearings. Fortunately, I didn't participate in any of those, and it is of a great benefit to have an independent hearing officer. So, thank you.
we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any further comment? Okay, is there anything else that you wanted to, no? Okay,
No, I just need the board, if you so choose, to approve the resolution.
all right. All right, also all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, we are unanimous again with Commissioner Herta absent. Okay, consider approval of the appointment of Sarah Gehrig
I'd like
as
to make a
the.
motion to approve Sarah Gehrig, independent hearing officer.
You're practically stamping on my lines.
I know it.
You know. Okay, yes. Okay, Commissioner Murray, and then that was Commissioner Millard on the second. Okay, any conversation or questions? Yes.
Just to point out, Sarah has been our independent hearing officer for a number of years. I've sat in on quite a few of the hearings. With great care, she represents us well, with great care, because some of the situations have been really difficult. But she's been professional and, as I said, represented us well. So I'm definitely in favor of Sarah being appointed our independent hearing officer.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Okay, seeing no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, so again, we are unanimous with Commissioner Herda absent. Okay, 3.3, consider approval of the administration's recommendation for Marshall Middle School Assistant Principal. Mr. Garner.
Thank you. Yes, as you saw in my memo, I would like to recommend Mr. Dan Jackson as the up-and-coming assistant principal at Marshall Middle School. Dan, his whole history here has been in Janesville. He was a seventh grade student of mine, so I have the pleasure of being able to do that. He was also, you're very familiar with the Janesville Multicultural Teacher Scholarship. He was a graduate of that program, and quite honestly, he's a rising star for us. And so it's with great pleasure that I would recommend Dan to this position.
So Commissioner Ardrey and Commissioner Hayworth. Any further discussion about Mr. Jackson? No? Okay. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, welcome. Welcome, Mr. Jackson.
He's not here tonight.
Oh, he's not here?
He'll be with us in July.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, well, good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay,
Going for a world record, you gotta keep going.
yeah. We do. All right. We are now at 3.4, an update on the Jeep program with Mary Christensen and Bob Smiley. Dr. Smiley.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the audience at home who might be watching this on stream.
Microphone, please.
That's not how we rehearsed it. Good evening, Commissioners. And for everyone at home who's watching this on our streaming services, I'm Dr. Robert Smiley. I'm the Chief Information Officer as well as the International Program Director.
And I'm Mary Christensen, the Janesville International Education Program, JEEP, Coordinator. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Tonight's presentation is going to be centered around the district promises and how the work that we're doing with the international program aligns with those promises. So as we go through this tonight, you'll see that we're really focusing on the promises that the district has and how the work that we've been doing and plan to do really supports the goals of the district.
As part of the School District of Janesville, JEEP does have some unique goals. So we do have a mission and vision that guides our work. In addition to that,
if you'll see on the screen tonight, we have chosen the image of a tree with very obvious roots and very obvious fruits. Sometimes we're going to talk about the work that we're doing that's putting down roots. To be college, career, and life ready.
probably the most, the flagship of our program that people most think of when they hear JEEP is the 2+1 program. So I just want to explain a little bit what 2+1 means to us. So a lot of international high school programs are 3 years, grade 10, 11, and 12. With our partner schools in China, they prepare for 2 years abroad in preparation to come for 1 year as part of our promise is that they're spending those years, they commit with their parents, they know that they have this to enroll at a U.S. college or university. So we really strive to make sure that they're ready when they get here for that +1. It's not just anyone coming in the final 11th hour.
If we look at the results so far, we have 153 graduates out of the program since our first student in January of 2014. I still remember his name was Edward. So Edward was our first student. In fact, he was Commissioner Ardrey was our first host parent. Many of you may not know that, but Mr. Ardrey was our first parent who hosted Edward. So appreciate that you're getting us off on the right foot. 100% of our graduates have gone on to be accepted to American colleges or universities. I do want to be clear that these kids are getting multiple offers from multiple universities, frankly, multiple universities in multiple countries. So we've had most of them go to US colleges and universities. A few of them gone to Canada or Australia, and one student even went to Japan. But they've all been accepted into a university, a US university or college of their choice. The next promise that we want to look at is relationships, efficient, effective, and caring interactions with our students, parents, and community.
The most obvious of these is the relationships that the students have with their host families, as we already sort of alluded to this evening. In addition to that, they are supported by their English language teachers, their international counselor. The role that I currently hold really relates to the relationships, and Dr. Smiley will talk a little bit more about that.
So Mary's role as JEEP coordinator underscores this promise completely because she works at building those relationships. You may not know, but we have about 18 or 19 host families that actually host our children in their homes. So for this coming year, we have 25 students who are coming here physically, and they'll be staying with about 17 or 18 families. A lot of people have discovered that whole foundation, and Mary is really at the core of holding all that together, of building those relationships. Same thing with teachers. How is it going at Craig? What are you struggling with? How can we make this better? Oh, there's also a cohort of teachers at Liangfeng, which is one of our Chinese sister schools. And all of those pieces are being held together with Mary's work as coordinator for this program. Culture and climate. The next promise, challenging, fulfilling, and enjoyable work environment for our employees. This one's really interesting because when you start to see the joy that JEEP brings to our teachers, they're like excited that they get to be a part of this program, and we're going to give you some evidence of that.
We do have lots to offer outside of just the high school program. JEEP is really multifaceted, and we are involved here in the School District of Janesville at all levels. So we are going to show you a couple of video clips, but I want to give you a little background on that. We established a partnership in Cali, Colombia, South America, in 2019, and that developed into a traditional sister school relationship. So what we have aimed to do was connect teachers with peer teachers from Colombia here in Janesville, and at the same level or close at elementary, middle, or high school, they collaborated. And third grade class at Colegio Bermans in Colombia, and a fifth grade classroom here at Jackson Elementary. And they access Tumble Books, which is an online library. Colegio Bermans is a bilingual school, so their students are learning in both English and Spanish throughout. So they identified some books that were of interest to them, and then they did a book review on Flipgrid, and then shared their videos between the schools, between the countries. And we have a couple of examples for you here.
Patrick's driving.
Wonderful. Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, this is one. First one.
Hi, dear friends for Jackson Elementary. My name is Martin Camacho. I am 9 years old. I am from Cali, Colombia. I am in third grade at Bergman School, and my first language is Spanish. I live with my dad, my mom, and my brother. I love playing soccer. Today I will share with you my favorite book for Kindle books. Ninja Baby is my favorite book. It's about a girl who was born as a ninja baby. Her name is Nina, and she throws everything away. And she likes to do all by herself. On a day, her mom and dad has another baby born. It was a baby Kung Fu master. He got all the attention of his parents. Nina was upset because she did not get that attention. Nina approached to to his brother and she asked him what is secret. I love it because I like ninjas. You should read it too. Tell me about you and your favorite book. Bye.
Then we have one more example of a Jackson Elementary student and her book review.
Hello, and I am Jeronimo Gaviria from the Birchman School, the grade is third B. And now I'm gonna present to
in Janesville, Wisconsin. I am 11 years old. My first language is English, but I speak Spanish at home, so I am bilingual. I live with my mom, my dad. My mom and my dad are teachers. My mom works at my school. And I live with my sister and my godfather. I am Nicaraguan. I even know how to play piano. I read the book I Must Have Bobo, written in Rose style. I Must Have Bobo is set in a house. The main character is Willie. He wants Bobo the stuffed animal, monkey, but he can't find him. So Willie looked everywhere. He saw something underneath his covers. In the end, Willie's cat took Bobo. They all fell asleep together in Willie's bed. I really like this book and give it a rating of 5 stars. Because I like when Willie's cat takes Bobo, I recommend you read this book because it's really fun and exciting. I'm so excited to hear what you think of this book. Bye, adios amigos and amigas.
You have to close that or I'll start the next. Thank you. So I just want to comment that Principal Moisen at Jackson has been asking us for years, can we please have a sister school that speaks Spanish? Because so many of my students have a Spanish origin, right? Us and said, we want more than a Chinese program. We want something that's bigger, that includes more countries from more backgrounds. And so as we go through tonight's presentation, you'll see that, but you see some really clear evidence of student-to-student connection, and it went beyond just the Flipgrid, but it was a great experience for all the kids involved. And
Another program that we wanted to highlight under this promise is a collaboration that resulted because of the pandemic, actually. So we were approached by a teacher preparation program in the Netherlands at NHL Stenden. The program is called ITES. And there were student teachers that weren't able to travel to do their in-person practicum. So they connected with us and said, is there any way we could do this virtually? And we said, we're experts at doing things virtually now. Of course we can help you. So we had 16 middle school and high school teachers here in the district who volunteered to host virtual practicum students. And the feedback we got was amazing, that the teachers got a lot out of it. Of course, the students did as well, and the practicum students did too, and you'll hear a little bit more about that in a few slides.
is finance, the continuous monitoring and realignment of district resources. And there's no way to look at this promise and realize that we aren't moving in that direction. Well, obviously money is important. We have to cover all of our expenses, and we'd like some more money beyond that to make sure that we're covering all of our expenses. To be able to do that, and we'll talk about what we've got planned for next year.
We are really looking forward, when it's safe, to resuming our normal practices of providing funding for students to travel and for teachers to travel. So we have allotted, as you can see in the presentation, some funds for funding that type of travel. Additionally, the positions that support the work of Jeep, that's kind of going back to that flagship program again, the high school program. My position, for example, 1.6 FTE for EL services, which is calculated the same way across the district, and an international counselor. All of that is funded through the tuition that Jeep students pay.
This has been a really successful program. So prior to the pandemic, we had 32 students, and we had it built around what that looked like. During the pandemic, we had to shift, as we all did, right? Our whole, look at the way the board is sitting tonight. That was a shift for us, right? We went from 32 to 42 students during the pandemic. So we grew by 10 in the middle of a pandemic. And now for next year, we're growing from 42 to 60. So we're continuing to see that growth. The Jeep programs had about $1.5 million added back to the general budget. So in above covering all of the expenses that run the program, we've added back to the general budget almost $1.5 million.
This year specifically?
And for this year, specifically, during the pandemic, we had some fewer expenses. We weren't traveling at all, but we raised $170,000 approximately this year. We had to wait for the final audit figures, but about $170,000 yet this year. Finally, the next promise that we want to take a look at is health and safety. And if ever there was a year when health and safety was a priority, this was the year when health and safety was a priority. When we look at this goal, there's as you know, we had a 2+1 model. The kids were 2 years in their home country. So their sophomore and junior year, they would stay there, mirroring our programs just as closely as possible so that when they came here, they could be successful. And the theory here is that if they're successful here as a senior, then they're going to be able to be successful when they step into an American college or university. That you build on success year over year such that there's like an on-ramp for the children to be successful. This past year, to keep everybody safe, we had to move to a 3+0 model. All 3 years, their sophomore, junior, and senior year had to be done in country. And so how we had to shape that to keep everybody safe really was the creativity of everyone's thinking. Mary, would you talk about that?
Sure. I really must just give credit to Dr. Bion and her team at Craig for meeting with us, brainstorming, pulling all of this together. The whole world had to pivot, but as a program, as a tiny part of this, we did too. And the way that we that we resolved the issue that we were having of not being able to get the kids here. Recorded videos, they did live sessions, and then they had a co-teacher on the other side in China that was supporting those lessons because the students were attending school in person for much of the year there. So we did sort of this collaboration, this cohort, the remote cohort we called it, to make sure that the kids could reach that goal, going back to the first promise, and graduate and get accepted into the college or university of their choice.
So before we go on, I would like just to comment. We have 60 students in line for next year. We've grown from 42 to 60. For next year, the count is 25 here in person with host families and 35 who are still concerned about this absolute health and safety promise is like they're still concerned. And so we're going to actually run both models this coming year. We'll have a group of students, 25 of them, doing the 2+1. 25 students will be in Janesville, and then the 3+0 will be for 35 students who will still remain at Liangfang, the same model that we used this past year. Yeah. For the next couple of slides, we want to take a look at where we're putting down roots, and in some cases where we're also gathering some fruits. We have a number of initiatives over this course of this next year that they've been working on that are beginning to really show some results. So Parker will have its first group of students this coming year. Part of those 25 are going to be at Parker for the first time. It's a new school called Hershey Foreign Language School. Think about chocolate, Hershey chocolate, and just put the emphasis on the end of the word, Hershey. We've been there a number of times building that relationship. And so those students have completed their first 2 years, their sophomore and junior year, and they'll be here as seniors, and they'll be at Parker so we have that first group of students going through Parker this next year. Again, gathering some of those fruits. Craig will continue to host, as they have, students who come from Liangfeng. And then we'll also offer the 3+0 option, as I mentioned, for the 35 students who want to remain in China, but study our curriculum and earn our diploma.
Continuing with our roots and fruits theme, we are excited to announce that we have signed MOUs, Memoranda of Understanding, with 4 schools in India. 2 are matched with Parker, 1 with Craig, and 1 with Marshall, to continue to diversify our partnerships and build that 2+1 model to potentially have high school students in a few years from India as well. As you saw earlier, the work with Kali Columbia continues. That model is a little different. It's not growing into a 2+1, but it is providing those firsthand experiences at the elementary and middle school level especially. So it is really offering something for all the kids in the district here. And then we also established a connection in Vigo, Spain in 2019, and we're continuing to cultivate that as well. I alluded to this a little bit earlier. We have the partnership now with that university, the NHL Stenden University in the Netherlands. And the work that we did virtually actually attracted 3 students to approach us and ask if they could do an in-person practicum for 2 months here in the fall. So we are really excited to welcome them. It actually goes really well because Mr. Pufal just shared an article with us last week about the or looking into hiring foreign teachers to fill some of the vacancies that we so desperately need to fill in Wisconsin. And this might really be a good pathway because NHL Stenden, the program, is a teacher preparation program. So if we can get them coming, we would love that.
We've had a number of conversations with the NHL Stenden to make sure that they, as we build this, right, they're going to get all of our job openings. So every time we have a first grader or a third grade teacher or a middle school, they're going to get all of those and they'll post them so their students can see and then apply to the ones that they are interested in. In addition, we're having active conversations right now, believe it or not, with Kazakhstan. That was a surprise to us. Vietnam, Pakistan, and finally, we have an active conversation going on about schools from Saudi Arabia, students who may want to come here. If we look out further and we look out at 2022 and beyond, there really is a focus on putting down roots so that we can gather the fruits, even because it's such a long lead time to get good, strong results. We know that we're going to need a dedicated director, along with the appropriate support staff to that. We're going to continue to develop those multiple countries that our educational model, this 2+1, 3+0, sister school, that whole model gets replicated in other countries as well. And then, do you want to talk about the Global Scholars Initiative?
Sure. You have likely heard about Global Scholars as a DPI program in which students meet certain criteria to earn a certification upon graduation. And we do have some students that participate in Global Scholars here in Janesville, and we're very proud of those students. JEEP would like to be more involved in that concept of Global Scholars overall to see what we can contribute to the district to build that up and have more students participate in that program, but also have more offerings so students are more globally aware in general.
So four of the things that we're working on with that Global Scholars specifically is this next year we're going to look to run a pilot program with what we're calling a school delegate. So having a point person in each school that can help us with this work. And again, it'll be a pilot project to see How does it go? What needs to be adjusted, and how can we make that successful? We know that long term, we want to provide many more travel opportunities for students, and that's going to have to involve some scholarships because there's too many kids that can't afford to do this on their own. Again, we talked about the Netherlands and securing teachers to teach here, but we think that that program can be much broader if we reach out to other universities in other countries, that we can actually be sort of a destination district for students that want to teach internationally as well. And then finally, we know that there's a lot of resources for K-12 education in terms of global education, and looking to bring those e-resources to our classrooms. We're open to questions or comments if you have any.
How does this program?
That is a very good question. So AFS, there are two and students are coming on a cultural exchange. So they don't earn credit, they don't pay tuition. Then there's an F1 visa that allows them to enroll, to earn credit, and to graduate, like in our program. They do pay tuition, and they also pay room and board.
Okay.
Of course, there are more differences, but that's high level.
Simple, yeah.
You know, I can't keep my mouth shut on this topic. I love it. Thank you for the work you do, Mary. It's a lot, and you've got so many great things to be proud of, and all the relationships you're building. It was neat at Craig's graduation. They actually paused in the middle to. We were virtual with the kids in China who graduated. Everyone got called by name by Dr. Bian, and it was really, actually not by Dr. Bian, another gentleman, but it was still very. I think it stood out to me as a good memory. So I love. We've hosted 2 kids at a time when we did the summer academies and that, and the memories that our families have from just that. So there's the hosting memories, and I mean, one night the girls wanted to cook us dinner. We're like, sweet deal, that's great. It involved them wanting to boil a chicken overnight. So they got mad at me when I said, no, we're going to use a crock pot for that. They truly got so mad at me, but we could work through it. But it's one of our family's favorite memories, not only like going to birthday parties that we had in that 2.5 week time frame. So, I mean, they're special to us. We still talk to some of them. And, but gosh, also having kids that are in classes with these kids in high school at Craig, the memories that they come home, so-and-so said this today. And this is something our students are so fortunate to get. We're such a fortunate district to have this opportunity. That's why I love that you guys put so much time in this. We didn't give up on it. We keep it going. You got creative in the pandemic, because this is, the fact that it makes money to me, I got to be honest, is, that's fine. But the relationships is the biggest promise that this is getting us, and it's for the students and for the host families, something that they're never going to forget and that they don't get anywhere else. So I love that in the book review. I love that you're also thinking of ways to further engage, more e-resources, but you're not just having the high school. My only concern is that we continue to support this with staff enough, because when I first came on board, and it was 5 years ago, but the teachers I talked to that were participating in this, their concern was, I don't know how much time I have. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I'm really spread really thin. So it sounds like you've ramped up the FTEs and that. So thank you for doing that. Just keep a watchful on that as you bring in 60, or, you have more kids on it. My only question I have is the 35-25, what is the financial split on what a 3 + 0 pays and what a 2 + 1 pays?
So the 2 + 1 actually is, we're trying to get back to normalcy, so pre-pandemic. So the rates of pay from the 25 kids is exactly what it was pre-pandemic. So they're paying tuition and they're paying room and board just like they were. And we're continuing, because it's only going to be the second year of that 3 + 0 model. So we're continuing to adjust that. We earn less money with that, but we also have a lot less expenses with it because the kids aren't here. No, no. Because it's complicated because the F1 rules, unless you're physically on American soil, you're not an F1 student. So they're a virtual student through Arise. Because there's rules that prevent a brick and mortar school like Craig and Parker of having international students that aren't physically here. So there's so many layers under all of this, but we think we found the pathway through the weeds on it. And then also we had to recognize that Liang Feng, in this case, or her, she, they are both having teachers, the mentor teachers, that they have to pay on their side. And so we're actually in much more of a cooperation with our international partner schools for those 3+0. But again, when we looked at, well, what are we going to do? These kids have studied for 2.5 years. We can't abandon them in the middle of a pandemic. And so we scrambled to put that together. I say scramble. It was we worked hard to put that together, right? And then it turned out to be really popular. And so you see that in that 25-35 split. And I imagine that that'll adjust because it's really up to the choice of the child or the family. So I imagine year over year, that'll somewhat bump along.
I guess I was waiting for the question about what are the fees? What actually are the fees?
Okay, so the same fees that we had prior to the pandemic, they pay $14,000 in tuition, and they pay $14,000 for room and board. So the students that are here are paying the same rate that they paid previously, so $28,000. And then I think it's $6,600 for the virtual students.
66 for a virtual student?
Right. 6,600.
Okay.
And they're coming in through Arise
Mhm.
because it's a virtual school.
What are the fee for a host family per
A
child?
host family, are you interested in hosting? I'd like
I
to
am
talk
not.
to you. I've got 2 students with your name on it.
No, you don't.
So again, we have to look at the guidelines. We start with the guidelines allowed for the visa rules. So on a J1, which is that visitor experience, we are absolutely not allowed to pay host families at all on that visa. It's forbidden. Then on the F1, we pay $825 per child per month. And the intention there isn't to make a profit, but really to reimburse a family for what it, I mean, can you imagine? We've had one family take 3 boys. That was a grocery bill and a half, right? So 3 teenage boys. And so we're trying to really offset the costs of doing this without being a burden on the family and leveling the playing field for a family that might want to do it but can't afford it. So we think we found that sweet spot of about $825. Kevin, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. The health and safety piece. Now, so we have individuals contracted now to come to our district from China. So what are we doing to convince me and the public that these individuals have been vaccinated or are healthy, or what are we going to do about that? What's the plan for that?
So we're following the CDC guidelines to a T, along with Rock County Health Department and then any of our local School District of Janesville policies on that. We're just as concerned as you are in making sure that A, we welcome them, and B, that we really do it in a way that's safe for everybody.
So then, tell me then, what are the federal guidelines for international travel coming into Janesville for somebody from China?
Off the top of my head, I don't know that because that's changing on a regular basis. they would have had to isolate in Singapore. So their 14-day quarantine would have actually been in Singapore. We have already reached out to the schools there. If the children or their families want to be vaccinated before they travel, we're encouraging that. If they would rather wait and get the US vaccine when they're here, our intention is to make that available to them. In other words, they have a choice. Do they want the Chinese vaccine called Sinovac? Or do they prefer to come here and have like Pfizer or Moderna?
This is just my opinion. I'm not comfortable right now not knowing exactly what sort of health and safety requirements we're going to have for individuals coming from China into our buildings at this point. I'm just not,
Well,
so I'm still haven't heard, so maybe, or they used to have to, not isolate, quarantine for 2 weeks somewhere. You know, again, I'm not,
it's clearly a target, isn't it, with the changes
Well,
in
this isn't we've done so well this last year and moving forward. I don't want to see anything, especially in regards to students that don't live here, something happening because we got 25 or more people, students, families, teachers coming from China, and we don't know if they've been tested, they've been vaccinated, or what's happened with these individuals. So I'm I don't know if administration has thought this far through this, or we're just going to say, here they come and see what happens.
Is what the district will be following. I mean, we could pair it to you what the guidelines are in June, but the guidelines may or may not be those same guidelines in August because they're constantly revising what the travel requirements are. I think that's what I'm hearing you say.
Do we know what it is now? They have to quarantine for 2 weeks in Singapore for anybody from China?
it was. Again, it's
But we don't know what it is today.
We
Okay.
don't think there is a national requirement from certainly not China, maybe from South America. Again, it's what's going on in what's the virus like in the country that they're coming from, I think is the larger question. We mentioned that we have 3 students coming to us from the Netherlands for 2 months. They'll actually be here in October and November. And these are adult age, they're college age students. And again, we'll be monitoring that whole situation of what's it look like in late September and what's it look like in the Netherlands before they would be arriving. So I think it's really situational, as well as it's kind of time bound to what's going on closer to the time of arrival. We could have made a decision in February and said, well, this is what we're going to require in August, but look how much has changed since February.
But I assume there's nothing that would stop this board from saying, we require X, Y, and Z from our international arriving students. Just like we've always balanced our decision-making on guidelines, but we've made lots of independent decisions. So that would be true, right? I mean, we could say you have to provide documentation that you've been vaccinated and you've been quarantined for 2 weeks before you come to Janesville. Okay. Thanks for that. That was one thing that's on my mind. The other thing is, I really like the direction that the program is going. We've evolved since day one. This program it's significantly changed. Maybe not so much in the theory that, and Commissioner Hayworth's experience with her students and her family, and I believe that. But now that we have like last year when it was all, or any time that's virtual, those fruits of interacting with the student aren't there. Is that correct? Because they're not interacting with any students. Well, they may be on a screen, but they're not interacting with students face to face.
It's certainly different. It's certainly a
Yeah.
different experience.
Right.
The same would be that all of us who were having Zoom meetings, it's a different type of interaction for sure.
Sure. So these fruits, right? Depends on what fruit you pick. So if I'm a Chinese student, I come here and I get to go to college somewhere, well, that's great. Good for you. But really, the fruit we're looking for is the interaction with international students, right? So that's that face-to-face piece,
So
right?
There's,
And I know I'm getting on my soapbox here again, but that's all great that these students are going, I'm restating, like going on to college, but I really don't care about that. Why should I, or any other taxpayer, care about a Chinese student getting accepted into a college here? Because really I'm concerned about is the other kids that live here in this district. So I'm glad the progress we're making, but I'm still want to make sure that we're doing it for the right reasons. So that's enough. I'll just let it go at that.
Okay, Commissioner Hannawell, I saw your hand.
Along the lines of students, well, they're not students, I guess, they're teachers from the Netherlands. A couple of questions along those lines. Are they comparable to a what would be maybe a senior out of UW Whitewater doing their student teaching? Second, then, so they're very close to being certified or licensed as a teacher, and then very hireable. And did I hear you say that they also are housed by host families? Okay, and then the last thing I was curious, I know you were talking about the Netherlands. Are there other countries that you're looking at from that perspective as opposed to the student, building on the potential, what do I want to say, employment pool of these individuals?
You want to? Sure.
At this point, our focus is this program with the Netherlands. And as it continues to evolve, we'll, look at it, perfect it, and then try to expand it. So this is really our very first step was the virtual practicum experience. The second baby step will be having some of those students here to do the in-person practicum. It's not a full student teaching semester, it's a shorter term. And then maybe we'll get to that full semester and hopefully attract some graduates.
Okay, well, thank you. So I just wanted to say that I have been a fan of this program all along. To me, what is learned for our students, there's a language component, there's obviously, a cultural component, global studies component, and all these things, I think, enhance the experience of our students and our families that host these kids. And I'm also grateful, you mentioned, Commissioner Hayworth, that you don't care whether it makes money and stuff. No, I hear you, because I felt the same way. I was like, I don't want it to cost money, but I've been really impressed with how sustainable it has become, and and that this is money that you talked about taxpayers. This money comes back. This is our money, right? We get to keep this money. Some of it goes for expenses, but it helps fill our coffers a little bit. And as far as like the transmission of disease and everything like that, I think that's a really important issue. Of course, I have a brother who lives in China right now with his family, and I can tell you that it's incredibly strict on both ends. He had to quarantine for 2 weeks in a hotel room with two had to do the same thing when he had to come back here, and they have to be tested, and if you and on the way in either way, and it's quite the process, and there seems to be, but it does change, from moment to moment. I do have one question though. So because of all of the health concerns, the visa process has become a little bogged down and a little bit more difficult. So what has been the impact on the visa project, especially the F1 visa, which is harder to get?
Thank you for your question. And as I answer this question, I'd also like just to comment, a visa, if you don't know, a visa is what our government issues as permission to come into the country. So without that, now sometimes we have something called reciprocity. So like with England, we can go back and forth without a visa because we've got this agreement, right? But with a lot of countries, China's one of them, our government, so they have to go to our embassy, one of them's in Shanghai, and they have to get, quote, permission. It's a huge process, and there's a queue of people. Like, it's a long line to get in line to get to actually go through this interview, and you are actually interviewed whether or not you're telling the truth and why you're coming and all of that. It has been an issue. In answer to your question, President Myers. And so we have been monitoring this we have a regular weekly meeting with our colleagues in China to talk about this. And so way back in March and April, we weren't sure the students were going to, even if they could get a flight, could they get a visa? You need both in order to come into the country. And so as it's evolved, why we have actually a representative office in China that China pays for on our behalf. And so they've done a lot of work there to make sure that our students could get in line, could get at the head of the line and get their visa. But then there was the next line to get in front of getting a flight. Can you actually get on a plane, and so right now I think we're expecting at least 2 different times that they're going to arrive in Chicago. So we'll have to make 2 trips to Chicago where we normally would try to make it in 1. We rent buses from Van Golder. But in this case, because of all of this, we're going to end up making a couple of trips. Again, we're continually adjusting and monitoring on a week-by-week basis. But in answer to your question, it's been practically a miracle to get the kids through the visa line.
And they do have their visas.
Yes, they do. The 25 do.
Greg?
And I would like to say, having been first host family with Edward, was an interesting experience. Interesting from the standpoint of, I remember Edward was basically he was entering high school, having had 1 year of high school in China, and my son was in the 8th grade. So 2 only boys who used to being only boys, it was an interesting dynamic to try to get them together. And I probably added a couple of gray hairs just over that. But ultimately, I think one of the key things, and I'll go with my 8th grade middle schooler, one of the key things that he learned is a bit more of toleration and acceptance. And how does that play today as he's at DePaul University? He's had to be a little bit more tolerant, a little bit more accepting of people. And in game design, the world in which he is in, people are all over the world. So he interfaces with people all over the world, whether he's in his gameplay or whatever it is. So he's been much more open to those things, I think a lot because of actually hosting the student. So that's a big positive, and it's hard to initially identify that as an outcome as Commissioner Murray is going, what is that connection? It is really hard to really see that initially, but it's been really outstanding. My question is about flexibility of the program, and fortunately we've developed into a defined 2+1, but is there any level of flexibility to that? Could it be 2+2 or 0+3? Or what is where is that level of flexibility at?
Sure. Thank you for your question. Thank you for your anecdote as well. The U.S. F1 visa requirements prohibit public school districts from enrolling F1 high school students for more than 12 months. So the +1 is our only option, or the +0. They could do more years in preparation there, or they could do a 2+1 +1 again back at home, or something like that. Private schools can enroll F1 students for multiple years, but we don't have that flexibility. So we're a little bit limited that way.
If I can add to that,
Please.
we also tried to work with Blackhawk Tech, where we would have students as seniors getting dual credit with Blackhawk Technical College. So we tried that 1+2 concept, and the State Department wasn't having it. We even tried, okay, we'll hold the visa when they're a junior, and then there'll be a Blackhawk. The visa would be held by Blackhawk when they're a senior, but we'll give them high school credit for it. They weren't having it because the rules are very, very strict. You have to actually have graduated before you can move into that dual credit piece. And so, to your point, we really have, and we continue to look for those avenues where we can sort of push the edges, right? And make so more kids could get involved. By the way, I hope Christopher's doing well. What year is he in?
I finished his 3rd year.
Wow.
So hopefully graduating this time next year, all goes well.
I want to talk to you afterwards because I met a young man the other day who's living in Seattle, who's a game designer as well. And so maybe we need to connect him with Christopher. So.
Thank you for that. I knew some of those things, but I thought it was really important that, we know, or for us to know that we're kind of boxed in and we're at the maximum level of what we can really do at this point. So, thank you.
Hi, thanks. I knew I had this. This is a Gazette from May 20th, 2020. And it's the views, and it's written twice. It's pulled out and italicized next in this opinion. It says, Board Member Kevin Murray is misguided in believing the program somehow distracts from the education of local students. So don't worry about it. I'm misguided.
I wouldn't say you're misguided. You're asking important questions. That's all. Okay. Yeah, Commissioner Paul.
Thank you. I have no questions. I just want to share that I have fond memories of foreign students that I attended classes with at Craig High School. Not in your program, but similar programs. Transformative experiences. I had the opportunity to travel abroad with my high school Spanish teacher and stayed in a home with a host family for a brief period of time. Transformative. In college, I had an opportunity to study abroad in Spain for a semester, and I lived with a family. transformative, changed my life, impacted me in significant ways that I will never know, and ways I do know. As a high school Spanish teacher, not in this district, I had exchange students that were wonderful and enriching, and I love them. So I commend the work that you're doing. I appreciate it, and you are transforming lives. So thank you for doing that work in our district.
Okay, anybody else? All right, well, thank you very, very much. Thank you for all of your information. Wonderful. Okay. All right, moving on. So we have Mr. McCray to talk to us about unspent dollars. Yes. That never happens to me. Somehow or another, they all get spent. Thank you. Go ahead.
So I think through the frugality of the district and open positions and lower than expected utility bills and assortment of issues, typically we come under budget, and that's kind of been our trend. And so historically, the district, the board, if you will, has earmarked dollars that are unspent towards Fund 73, which is the district's OPEB or other post-employment benefit obligation. You've probably heard me say before that this is an actual expense to the district, right? We just don't line item it. All right, and ideally we would line item it, but we would have to become extremely forensic, and there would be essentially about $2 million in other expenditures that we would then earmark for our Fund 73. So that's just our reality. It's probably going to take me longer than the 22 months I've been here to figure out a strategy for that, but it's something that Superintendent Pufal and I talk about frequently. So ideally, about this time of the year, we come to you with essentially a rough dollar value. All right, as I'm sure the board recalls, we've had a recent retirement in my department, right? So we're a little bit understaffed at the moment. Mary Ann Van Valen, retired business manager from Milton, is providing us some assistance. But unfortunately, the reality is she enjoys retirement more than working for us. So it's not essentially a full one-on-one replacement. So as we proceed and as we prepare for the audit, essentially that dollar value comes clearer and clearer to us. Now, is it X or Y at this point in time? Because I'm a business manager and I play my cards closely, I'm not even going to venture to guess. But keep in mind that it was a very tight start to our fiscal year. All right, so perhaps how we've ended the year in prior years may not come to the fruition that we hope it would be to meet our OPEB obligation. We've also, and again, let me reframe, and this is posted in the memo as well. So in years past, prior to Fund 73 or Fund 46 opportunity, essentially those dollars would fall to the bottom line, and this happens across many districts in the state of Wisconsin, to then build up their fund balance. All right, but keep in mind that when you allow dollars to go to your fund balance, those are not expenses, and we are a highly aided district, and so then we would receive aid on those expenses. The beauty of Fund 73, the beauty of Fund 46 is when we make that transfer prior to the end of July into an actual cash account, we are then aided on those expenses. So it's a very good move. It's a move that happened prior to my arrival. So it's a move I made in my prior district. So kudos to my predecessors for that strategy, and obviously for the board for providing that direction. The second option, after having highlighted Fund 73, is Fund 46, which is our long-term capital maintenance budget. So I think typically it's been 1 and 2. Again, we meet the obligation to our retirees first. If there are then additional funds, we would move them into Fund 46. So I think last year Commissioner Ardrey said, well, let's make the Fund 73 move, then Fund 46, and if there still is money left, let's go ahead and plow that back into Fund 73. If he's proposed to make such a motion, and I've not had the opportunity to ask him not to do that particular motion, because that's about another 400 lines to a journal entry. And so it's best to maybe do that once rather than twice in recalculating an alternative figure. I didn't know that at the time, but James Amy Leager had said, if we could do it once, that would be great. So I would make that request. And again, I know I like questions ahead of time. So unfortunately, I did not get to Commissioner Ardrey to ask him if he does make such a motion to perhaps, and again, it's his prerogative, not to make a motion that particular.
Why am I thinking Fund 46 was stopped and we couldn't do anything more in that? What am I? Just who knows what I'm thinking, right? I mean,
Is it possible you're thinking about the program? Is it 31?
I thought it was in the 30s.
Act 32. Act
Okay,
32.
thank you.
Yeah, that was
you can't set aside money for
yeah.
energy efficiency improvements.
Yeah,
right?
I think
Okay.
that's
All right.
And that's correct. So just real quick, Act 32 and Act 28 were part of the DPI and the state legislative allowing districts to pursue those two mechanisms. Those were deleted as part of a state budget.
Mm-hmm. Okay, do I have any other questions? Commissioner Hannawell.
I heard you explain what Commissioner Audrey had made the motion for last go around. So how would you prevent that if you put funds in, if you put an amount in Fund 43, then 46, and you got leftover? So then how do you bypass having to do the 400 extra ledger lines?
The idea is, and that's a very good question, right, is to, so this is what happened last year, right? We did about $2 million in a Fund 73 obligation. I believe we just did north of about $1 million in a Fund 46, and then I can't recall, but we'll say it was a six-figure dollar value to move back to Fund 73. We did have some funds still fall to the bottom line, right, to build up our fund balance. That's not bad. We just really hope that it's minimal. $100 is not good, but if it's certainly more than that, then that's great. We're just not aided on that. So if we didn't choose Fund 73 or 46, and let's just round up and say that was about $3 million, right? And so $3 million on a $113 million, probably at that time, we'll say about $115 million budget is significant, all right, but it really isn't, right, from a percentage standpoint. We want to be aided on $3 million. Did I answer your question on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, for our new board members, I know what aided means.
Mhm.
Maybe you could just explain it a little bit better. In other words, it's just neutral money. However, because we didn't spend it on expenses, if we spend it on expenses, we will get aid for that.
Correct. So just a real quick primer, and that's an excellent suggestion. So as we know, we're obligated by a revenue limit authority. All right. And within that authority are local taxes and state aid. And for the most part, we're right about 66% aided within that revenue limit authority. All right. If that 66% kind of goes up and down, all right, then that's either tax relief or tax impact for taxpayers. So the more we can be aided on within the revenue limit authority, all right, then essentially the less of a tax burden the district is. 30,000 foot. All right, so.
Okay, any further questions? This is an action item. And so do I have a motion?
Sure.
Commissioner Ardrey?
I would move that all unspent funds at the end of June 30th, 2021 go to Fund 73 and then Fund 46.
Thank you very much.
We are very gracious for that motion. Thank you. Grateful for that motion.
Now, I actually have a comment. So if we do not have at least $2 million in unspent funds, then do we still make up the obligation to the OPEB funding?
Yeah, so again, for new board members and just as a refresher, as part of our fiscal audit, we work with Key Benefits Concepts to conduct an actuarial study to determine the actuarially determined contribution, right, the ADC. And that is roughly about $2 million. If we don't meet that, there's not necessarily a penalty, all right, but essentially we're shortchanging ourselves if that's essentially where we're going. The good news is the district has made strides to really reduce its OPEB liability. All right, and so there are different levels, and this is really Tina Johnson's bailiwick, right? So I'm not going to go too deep into the various structures of our post-retirement benefits, but essentially they're being scaled down over time. But we still have an obligation because we still have a liability on the books.
So I think that being said, really, I need to change my motion. Because I left it open-ended. So it really would be, the Fund 73 up to 2.5 million. So I'm already extending it beyond where we would be with the intention of the first 2 million for the fund. And then the next piece, if we can put 1 million in Fund 73, great. But if not, then it would be 2.5, up to 2.5 in Fund 73, and then all remainder in Fund 46.
So okay. So we had a second, first of all. Procedurally, I think we need to clarify though a little bit here.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that your motion is that based on the amount of unspent funds, we will put up to 2.5 in Fund 73, and any beyond that would go to Fund 46.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, and Commissioner Millard, I think you seconded it. Is that acceptable to you? Okay. Any further discussion about that motion? Okay, then let's vote. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so we are unanimous with Commissioner Herta absent. Thank you very much. Okay, district-wide facilities planning update. Mr. McCray?
Sure. I'm not going to take the entire 15 minutes allotted. I'll kind of keep it high, but keep it informative. I know Commissioner Argery will review a little bit more detail as part of the treasurer's report, so I don't want to steal his thunder since he was kind enough to soften his motion for me this evening. So real quick, we are in the midst of bid package 1. Okay, bid package 1 relative to our secure pathways includes Adams, Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, Van Buren, and Harrison. The total budget, and this is what we spent a great deal of time with at finance, a representative from Cullen was available essentially to discuss the budget. Originally it was budgeted at 3.4. We've come in at roughly 2.9, so just about $490,000 under budget in phase 1. All right, and you're gonna say, woohoo, okay, but keep in mind there are additional 2 phases, all right, to go through. Part of the changes is really the work and working with Principal Simmons and Dave Leader and a little bit of an idea that I had, and then our great partners at EUA and JP Cullen was kind of redoing what was originally thought to be and costed out as the entrance to Lincoln. So, and it's not my neighborhood, right? It's your neighborhood. So north, south, east, west. It was at one entrance and we've shifted it to the other, and I'll leave it at that. Bid package 2. So actually Dave Leader took representatives from EUA and Cullen around today to take a look at the buildings included in bid package 2. And that includes Edison, Jackson, Madison, Marshall, Monroe, Parker, and Wilson. So 7 buildings as part of bid package 2. After that kind of initial walkthrough by the architects, in case there are any principals listening, right? I know Dave sent out an email. The follow-up is really with the principals, right? Because again, we want to have a dialogue with that leadership group. It's not driven by the ESC in terms of what their secure pathways or secure sequences will look like. And then at the tail end of this month, as part of the boiler component of the referendum question, that bid package will be going out at the end of the month with a return about 3 to 4 weeks after that is released. So that's where we're at with that.
Any questions? Comments? Yeah.
Just to add, and since he's taking care of most of the Finance, Buildings, and Grounds Committee report out. Thank you. But one item to note, and it's really to our partner, I'll say, Cullen. having sat through and participated in their bid event. So the bid event is the package or scope of work goes out to all of the vendors, or they have the opportunity to submit bids for all of that. And the level of detail that Cullen goes through of reviewing all of the bids is really what drove I would say, the savings under the first phase of whatever, 400 or so $1,000 was really through their conscientious work. So it isn't just that, and they are one of the vendors, so they're doing work, and obviously they're representing themselves for that, but really representing the school district and the community as a whole. So I think it was really important to say that. I stated it in the committee meeting, but just going through that, it was a superior job. So,
Thank you. Great. Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to the Finance Buildings and Ground Committee report. Commissioner Ardrey?
I'm only going to add just a little bit, and the part that I'm going to add was at the very end, is kind of what's coming up. And what's coming up, SiteLogic, previously UNESCO, with the work that they had previously done under Act 32, as part of that contractual obligation is for them to report out. So I want to have them do that, as well as going through what was mentioned, maybe it was closed, I don't remember, but overall facility evaluation. Whether it is SiteLogic or another entity, we will get into that discussion of some of the things that we would really look at. Key to mention that is one of the items that I really want to get back to from a committee is take the committee on the road for particular meetings that we may have discussion items, but not necessarily anything that needs to be recorded. Those that need to be recorded that should be shared with all board members will still meet here at the ESC. But we really want to make sure that we can put our eyes on the buildings and specifically look at some of the issues, whether it is the space usage or allocation, as we go into that. So then we can have a much more, I'll say, fruitful conversation from a board standpoint, at least at the committee, to bring it back to everybody else. So that would definitely be a move from what we've had most recently. Thank you.
Thank you. When I first started, I was on the finance committee as well, and when we used to meet at the various buildings, and I just learned so much about what the facilities were like and their needs and everything else. So I think that's a good idea. So, any other comments or questions? Okay. So here we are. We are at board requests. I don't have any new board requests. I don't think. Okay. And future meeting times and dates. I have the Finance Buildings and Grounds meeting on July 6th. And at a unique time, because it's summer, 1 p.m. And so right now that's here at the ESC, right? Okay, all right. And then our next board meeting is July 13th at 6 o'clock, right here in this bat channel. Okay. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.